You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Thursday. It is 1:30 p.m. Central. It is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. You know what's popping off in the world of futures options? Well, let's find out together, shall we? It is time once again for TWIFO. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Two things to hit you with here at the top of the show. First off, if you're not listening to the full network, man, you are missing out. Wherever you're getting this, make sure you're getting the full kit and caboodle. And then B, if you want to go above and beyond, you want 2 additional shows, an exclusive podcast feed, all your own live streams, fun, awesome guests, and just giveaways, all kinds of fun, early access to things. theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old CME Group Hot Seat today. First, let's go out to the hinterlands of St. Charles, where we are joined once again by our old pal, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to TWIFO, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here.
You ready to talk Bitcoin, and nothing but Bitcoin for an hour, sir?
I mean, I want to do rough rice and lumber as well.
We'll see if there's time. We'll see if there's time for the rough rice and lumber.
I'll do my best with the rough rice.
All right, here we go. It is time for the movers and shakers.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we break down everything lighting it up to the light side and to the dark side this week. And, you know, after just a ray of optimism, just kind of green across the board, with the exception of a couple notable categories, obviously the rates and the metals, the 2 primarily inverse correlated products you're going to talk about. With the exception of those, you saw a lot of green on the screen. That is now starting to mitigate. For the last few sessions, we have been tilting towards the red, and that is reflected now in our week look back. Going back exactly 1 week to our show last Thursday, we are actually mostly down here now, which is kind of interesting. I would say we're roughly 80-20 in terms of red versus green in our 1 week total chart, everything over there at CME. Of course, if you look at the largest percentage mover, that is to the green. So there obviously still is some green to be found out there, but just smaller in number than perhaps you might expect. Maybe starting to see some consolidation out there. But Uncle Mike, this is the moment we have been waiting for. You think you're ready? Think you can handle walking the folks through a little bit of the light side and the dark side, sir?
I'm ready. I've actually been practicing.
I had a feeling you were. All right, I'm excited. Have at it, sir. The floor is yours.
All right, so I'm doing both the light side and the dark side?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start out with the dark side. Coming in at number 5 on the dark side, we have WTI down 6.01%. Edging out WTI for the number 4 position, not by much, just 6 basis points of performance. We have oats coming in at negative 6.07%. At number 3, it's not the shiny stuff. It's not the totally dull stuff. It's a kind of in the middle stuff. We have copper at negative 6.76% on the week. Then going further, we have some interesting moves in terms of from where it was. We have an interesting move from where it was to where it is now. We have bean oil. Last week, it came in at number 3 on the light side with a gain of 5.98%, but not this week. Markets say, I'm taking all that back. Took all that back and then some, because now bean oil is down 7.68%. And then finally, drum roll please, the number 1 dark side. This week, for the second week in a row, we have palladium down 9.47% this week on the dark side. Last week, it was in at minus 10% on the dark side. Things are not looking very shiny in palladium right now.
Look at you, sir. Practice makes perfect. Crushing it on the dark side. You think you can handle? You think you can go 2 for 2 to the light side as well?
Let's see what I got. I'm on a roll. Don't stop me now. As my good friend Freddie Mercury, who would have no idea of who I am, would say, don't stop me now. All right, on the light side, coming in at number 5. Things have been a little bit smoother than the name would indicate. For at least for this one, we have rough rice coming in at a gain of 2.19%. Now coming in at number 4, they are not fat, they are lean. We have lean hogs coming in at 2.71% on the week for the gain. Coming in at number 3, they're really bringing the wood this week. That would be lumber with a gain of 4.31% on the week. Next, we have natural gas coming in at the number 2 spot at 5.6% on the week as a gain. Excitement in natural gas, although that's really not that exciting in natural gas, but it is still the number 2 spot on the light side. And number 1, coming at you, it is the one to where I'm going to have to just gain some strength to say such a thing, but it's there. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a good thing, at least for the next day. After that, I really don't know if it's going to be a good thing or not. And I don't even know if it's going to be a good thing for the next day, quite frankly. We have coming in at a 15.79% gain on the week. We have not Shiba Inu. We have Bitcoin. And that is your dark side and light side for the week. This is Casey Kasem reminding you to keep your feet in the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Well done, sir. Very well done. You know, you did it in the right order. You started at the bottom. You worked your way up. You built tension. You threw some puns in there. You even remembered to mention where they were last week. I don't know if I'm ever sick on this TWIFO thing, I might have somebody who could fill in, at least for the light side and dark side. Well done, sir. I am impressed.
No, thank you. I tried to give it my best Casey Kasem impression for America's Top 40 from back in the day in the spirit of our 80s trivia references from our other show that we're on.
That'd be a good one for an 80s trivia one of these days, too. Mr. Casey Kasem. But I digress. No hints of what's coming up. You don't need any hints. You're already smoking Mr. Rocklow, so you don't need any hints on the 80s trivia. All right, you can now rest your voice. I will handle the CVOL movers and shakers for the week. Member listeners, you can find these for yourselves. Just type CME and CVOL into pretty much any browser on the planet. That'll get you to the CVOL dashboard. Once you're there, you want to set that high-low range to 1 week. Oh, you also want to check the aggregates tab at the top. Is individual product categories, obviously, we're looking at the aggregates to kind of get a full snapshot picture there. And I like to go for an ordered list, but, to each their own. You can do whatever you like out there, listeners. And we're seeing kind of a mixed bag on the CVOL front this week. Some names pinning the needle to the upside right now, some pinning the needle to the dark side, and some kind of hanging out in between. So a very mixed bag on the CVOL front. We'll start at the top of our list with energy today, 59.26, up 2.41 points just today. So energy vol getting a little frothy. It's also hanging out at its high level for the week right now. The low was 55.22 set about a week ago out there. So energy vol getting frothy out there. Commodities CVOL coming in right below it, 35.67, up 1.22 points just today. And another one pinning the needle to the upside for the week. The low was 33.70. So energy and commodity vol getting frothy right now. Then below it, we have the metals. Uncle Mike's beloved metals CVOL, 17.16, up 0.46 today. So getting a little bit of juice today, hanging out towards the low end of its range for the week, though. The low was 16.70 and the high 18.38. So we've had a little bit of range out there in metals vol this week, which is interesting. Below that, we have the ag products CVOL, 18.12 today, off 0.18 today. Also hanging out for the low end for the week. The high was 19 even. So a little bit of action out there in ag CVOL this week. Below it, we have the treasury price vol, not the yield vol, but the price vol, 660, off 0.28 today. That's a decent size move in treasury price vol in one day. That is the low for the week. The high was 7.14. Below it, we have the FX CVOL, 7.58, off 0.35 today, and kind of hanging out at the middle of its range. The low was 7.29, the high 7.93. And then the big dog, at least in terms of total numbers, we have the Treasury Yield Vol, 109, pretty much even today, off about 5.5 points just today. So they are smoking Treasury Yield Vol. That is also the low print for the week. The high was 118.71. So they are coming for yield vol this week, listeners. All right, we have all the numbers crunched and the gang assembled. We have to commence our journey. And I know Uncle Mike's not going to like it, but it's kind of hard to ignore. So I think we have to begin our journey this week in his favorite product. Yes, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. Here we go.
It's time to explore the volatile world of Bitcoin, Ether, and more. It's time to talk about crypto.
All right, listeners, you know where to go to follow along with these reports for yourselves. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. Once you're there, you're going to go into that drop down, and it's pretty easy to find. It is an alpha order list after all. So you're going to go one slot from ags down to cryptocurrency. We don't get to hang out in this one too often because, quite frankly, it doesn't do a ton of paper. But if ever there was a week where we were legally obligated to discuss crypto, it is this week. In fact, we had a big poll about crypto being the wildest week in the history of the asset class this past week. And 2/3 of our audience agreed with that. You said, yes, it was the wildest week in the history of the asset class. So I think we're legally obligated to discuss it. So go down one slot to cryptocurrency. Product family indexes. We're going to kick things off, obviously, in the big Bitcoin option. Before I break it down, Mr. Uncle Mike, I know you play a good game of loathing Bitcoin, but even you had to at least be curious about what was going on this week. It's been quite the rampage in Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on these massive movements we're seeing in the crypto markets this past week, sir?
Well, I think with it, President Trump, I'm not trying to be political, but I will say he's a good politician. I don't think there's anyone that can argue with that. He's made the highest political office on planet Earth twice, so you really can't argue with that. And so I'm not really sure what his real position is on crypto, but on the campaign trail, he kind of leads the impression that he is a crypto person and that he likes it. And so I believe that crypto people, they're kind of like, crypto's like the new gold in terms of if you ever say anything bad about gold 10 years ago to a gold person, then, I mean, they don't take too kindly to that, to say the least. People who believe in gold typically have a very deep conviction on gold for a variety of reasons. And crypto people are kind of the same way in a lot of ways. If I were to say something bad about crypto, one thing that I've noticed whenever I go on to the professional show, or whenever I go in the hot seat, a lot of the questions that I get from the audience are, why do you hate crypto so bad, or things like that. And so with that being said, the smart thing that Trump did is he kind of gave the impression, he never necessarily said that, crypto is going to be the thing forever. He's, at least from what I've seen, he's never really committed to crypto being a mainstay thing like he has on some of his other policies. But he kind of teases you a little bit, and it at least made me think that that would entice the crypto people to vote. And so once Trump got elected, he's now viewed as a crypto president. And I do think this is kind of a Trump rally, if you will, that we've had kind of going into the election and following the election. Now, will it stay? Who knows? We will see on that, of course. Long term, I'm personally still not a fan of Bitcoin, but I do think the recent rally, whether it's good or bad for society or for crypto or for the markets or for whatever in general, I am crediting this to the Trump effect in this regard. So I do believe that. And I think that in this coming administration of Trump, if crypto does stay around, one thing that I could see, one thing that I really enjoyed in the first Trump administration is that he would say, I think we're going to put tariffs out, lots of tariffs. Markets would go down. And then when you'd see the market start to bottom, a lot of times you could view it as a buy signal. And then once you buy it, at that stage, Trump doesn't like markets going down. They would say, you know what, I've changed my mind. I don't know if we're going to do quite as many tariffs. And then the market would rally. And that was a Trump trade that I enjoyed more than once during the first administration. And I'm curious to see if Bitcoin he'll have something similar going on in the Bitcoin world in his second administration. Who knows? But long story short, for the rally that we have had recently, I do credit it to Trump. And if it's going to continue, well, I will say a good big fat, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we all have been lulled into complacency a little bit with the Biden administration. He was not prone to, let's say, put out random tweets in the morning that could impact the markets on a daily basis. We all have to get back in that mode again of, oh no, what did he tweet today type of mode. So again, all of this data pointing to how he shouldn't be a single-digit VIX president. Yes, that's exactly what he was early on in his presidency. We have a
unbelievable
poll about that right now, listeners. Speaking of polls, Uncle Mike, while you were talking, we put out a flash poll just for fun. We said, hey, it's only going to run for the duration of the show. So if you're listening live, get at it. But we said, will Uncle Mike talk about silver, or his beloved silver S&P 500 and the 10-year note on TWIFO today? The answer is, Uncle Mike, the choices are but of course or heck no. And right now, 100% of the folks are saying but of course. So they're down with you getting to your. We'll see if we'll get to your stuff. First, I do have to break down a little bit of Bitcoin, because if ever there was a week, listeners, this is it. How much paper, by the way, Bitcoin, the futures, just a tick below 90K as we're coming into the start of the show, 89,920 right now. So retreating a little bit off their highs, still up 16.25% just since Monday, or 12,560 handles. You go back to the end of the show last Thursday, they're up nearly 16%, 15.79%. So it's been quite the run out here in Bitcoin. And are we seeing some paper out here finally? The answer is kind of decent paper, I guess. Remember, this is a 5x multiplier contract, the big Bitcoin option. So it's not for you and I. It's for the funds. It's for Bitto to use. It's for different institutional players. Unless you're looking to sling 5 Bitcoin per contract. Remember, we're at nearly 90,000. So you're talking $450,000 notional value for each of these. So big boy contract here. So you're not going to see the 100,000 contract prints in this. It's just not the way the contract is designed. 3,000 this week. That's actually pretty respectable, given this thing has struggled to put up even, 500 most week. A couple of hundred is usually a good week for this one. So nearly 3,000 over 10x its usual volume. That's actually respectable out here this week. And looks like the big dog print are going up in the November contract. Has about 15 days to go here, listeners. What is the volume? You might be wondering. It's a 61. That's up 9.6 points. So in the annals of Bitcoin, vol is not the most explosive we've seen, obviously, but it's not nothing either. And compared to a lot of the products we're going to talk about today, it's probably more volatile than most, if not all. I have to go see exactly where nat gas is trading right now. That's probably the one contender for the vol throne this week. But that is the vol. Skew-wise, we're not seeing a lot of evolution, which is interesting because usually those calls are bid and the puts are offered. That's what we have right now, but it's about 2 points in either direction. So I think we've kind of hit another equilibrium level here. And the big dog this week, listeners, were the 80,000 puts. I said we're threatening a 90K right now. 80,000 puts, so nearly 10,000 handles out of the money. These go away in 15 days, not even 14 days and change, listeners. So it looks like it might have been an 80,000, 60,000 put spread going up. These puts traded 226 times this week, so that's more than a week's worth of volume sometimes in this product. So that's decent numbers. And looks like the 80,000, 60,000 put spread may have traded about 100 or so times on Monday alone. So both opening. So I don't know, maybe Uncle Mike, maybe that fits with your bearish philosophy. Somebody maybe taking advantage to fade it. 80, 60, that's a pretty far fall for Bitcoin in 14 days, Uncle Mike. So maybe someone's out there feeling your bearish hypothesis. What do you think?
I mean, it could be. It's Bitcoin's something that there's no doubt it's very volatile with everything it's done, with everything with which it's doing. So if you're going to take a shot on something, that would probably even be a little bit more bearish than I would go for 14 days. That's kind of soon. But if you're going to be bearish, you might as well be bearish, right?
Go big or go home, as Uncle Mike always says here on the show here.
Yeah.
That's your favorite saying. After never before has there been a history in the life of selling or buying. That's your next favorite saying out there. Go big or go home. Are they going big or going home on the micro Bitcoin options? The answer is they're looking pretty decent. 8,800 contracts. Now, this is a micro, so bear that in mind. Much smaller notional size. But we haven't seen close to 10,000 contracts going up in this thing in a while. So that's also respectable out here. Looks like the big dog here, looking a little bit different. We have the Dinos 90,000 calls leading the dance with about 800 contracts. These have about 43 days to go. And they all went up on Wednesday this week. So it's interesting. Another one where everything traded on Wednesday, so yesterday, and nothing today, not much Tuesday or Monday. Huge spurt of paper. Looks like closing on the 65,000s 550 times and then opening on the 90,000. So maybe we have a bit of a roll. If that is the case, it looks like a house money roll because they're doing a little bit more size on the 90K leg. So if you were long 65,000 calls and you now turn them into 90, hey, I take my hat off to you. You're sitting pretty right now out here, listeners. Looks like we also had some other paper going up this. So it doesn't all line up quite one-to-one, but for whatever reason, Wednesday was the day. We also saw some prints on the 60,000 put. So people are liking the 60K strike for whatever reason. This also in December. They traded about 600 times this week, all of that on Monday. Take it back. They did a one lot on Tuesday, but nearly 600 of it all opening on Monday. Looks like against nothing else. So once again, this 60,000 strike coming into play, this time a little bit longer term, going all the way out to December. So listeners, if passes Pearl out, they're probably buying those out here, but you never know. Yeah, interesting stuff out here. You like that 60,000 strike by December, listeners? You think we could retrace all the way down there? I think Uncle Mike does, but I won't put words in his mouth. All right, Uncle Mike, I forced you to talk crypto long enough. Where do you want to take our TWIFO feast next, sir?
Well, I mean, why don't we talk about some natural gas? It's up 5.6%.
All right. I was going to talk one of your beloved top three, but I'll do energy if you want. All right, listeners, to the world of energy, we go.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, nat gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
All right, listeners, keep the party going. Pop out a cryptocurrency. You only have to go down one slot. Energy's right there, listeners. Then you're going to go in product family down 3 slots to nat gas. And then, bam, you're off to the races. Just like nat gas right now, up about a dime on the week. Trading 277 coming into the start of the show. So up about a dime. And on the week, up nearly 6%, 5.6%. In terms of action, was it a banger week out here in nat gas options? The answer was yes. Nearly 1 million contracts on the tape. 951,000. So they're not playing around in nat gas yet again. This just goes to spoil the notion that you can't trade options on a sub $5 underlying. This is just blowing the doors off from a volume perspective. And of that, 57%, so quite a substantial percentage going up in the Dinos contract, only has 11 days to go. So a lot of near-dated paper here in natural gas. Mr. Uncle Mike, first off, how surprising was it to have Matt from ORADS diving into nat gas on the show last episode? That surprised me. I didn't know he was a nat gas watcher. And then B, what's catching your eye out here in the sometimes explosive world of nat gas, sir?
Well, it was definitely a surprise. I did not know that Matt was a natural gas guy. So I guess like a lot of men our age, we have a desire for gas. Anyway, ba-bumch. But in terms of what's catching my eye, like anything, I think we need to relate a lot of this to the election, or that's what I'm looking at a lot of things. And so on November 5th, nat gas went down. But since then, we've kind of had, excuse me, it's been somewhat flat, and by flat for natural gas terms. But earlier this week, we had the big move on Monday, and we held it. But then today, we're actually down a pretty decent amount. So the rally that we've had in natural gas over the last week in terms of it getting the coveted number 2 spot on Mark Longo's top 40 or the top 5, whatever you want, the light side top 5, sorry. We're getting that, but it'll be interesting to see if that would hold tomorrow. Because with the sell-off that we're having today, not sure if it's going to continue or if we're going to bottom out in the upper levels with which we are at right now from the Monday gap up. So I think natural gas has always fascinated me in that if you want some volatility in some way, shape, or form in the futures world, natural gas is definitely something that you can find it. And like you were saying, you can definitely trade options on underlyings that are below 5, but granted, the contract size is a little bit different than your one lot on a $5 stock, that's for sure. So I like it because of the volatility that exists. And the other thing that I think is going to be important to see is we do have this thing coming up called, what is it called again? Oh, yeah, winter. And how's winter going to affect the pricing of natural gas? At least in the Midwest, things have been relatively mild over the course of the last month. I don't think we've had like maybe 1 or 2 freezes, if I can remember correctly, over the course of the last month. Now, granted, it's only mid-November, but so far, going into the colder months, things have been a little bit mild. So there's a lot of things that could really affect natural gas going forward. But in the meantime, if you are a natural gas bull, at least up until today, there's been a whole lot of grinning going on, mostly by you.
Yes, indeed. A lot of grinning out here. Let's see what's lighting up the tape out here this week. Like we said, listeners, 57% of the paper going up in the D's contract. So that's where we're hanging our hat this week. 66.57. So remember I said nat gas is the lone potential rival to the vol throne today. I'll have to go back and check. I know Bitcoin was right around that level as well. I think there were lower 60s, though. So I do think nat gas is taking the vol throne this week. Up 7.2 points again this week. Nothing else we're going to talk about this week that really is going to rival these vol levels. I mean, the ags get into the 30s and things. And obviously, S&P vol is nowhere near this, or equity vol. So, yes, Bitcoin and nat gas once again vying for the throne, with nat gas taking it this week. Skew-wise, we had the puts last week, 3.3% cheap. This week, 3% cheap, so no real big evolution there. The calls last week, 5.7% bid. They are 7% rich this week, so ticking up. That's on top of course, listeners, the at-the-money vol also ticking up 7 points. So calls getting a little bit juicy out there in nat gas land. Folks may be looking for a little bit more upside, which is kind of interesting that our number 1 most active contract out here with nearly 1 million contracts on the tape, it was the 2.5 put. So folks, look into the dark side perhaps again. They were trading actively all week long. They did a total of 56,000 contracts, pretty much 11 to 16,000 every day of the week, opening every day out here. The OI right now, 54,000. So it looks like, again, all this paper this week was opening. That's pretty much the volume this week lines up exactly with the OI we have. So kind of interesting, folks, just piling into a lot of 2.5 puts. If past is prologue, a lot of people were probably buying these. We do see a lot of buying. Obviously, there's some selling in there as well, but a lot of people do like to fade some of these recent rallies out here. We've also heard, Mike was talking about winter. It has been pretty mild so far, so that's obviously been weighing on nat gas. But of course, we never know. This is one of the most seasonal, if not the most seasonal products we're going to talk about here on the show every week. I mean, you can look at the term structure and see it for yourself, listeners. So interesting stuff. Interesting, though, as I mentioned that, let's go out to Jan and Feb just to see, because that's usually where obviously the depths of winter are striking, and that's where the bid is most pronounced for nat gas. I said we're at about a 7% bid for the DEES contract going away in 11 days. We're looking at a 12.5% bid to the Feb contract, and the Jan contract 10.3%, Rich. Both of those also at about a 66 vol. So vol about the same in the winter months here, but a little bit more pronounced bid in February, which again makes sense. Then it kind of falls off to 8.5% for March, and then it's gone. It's completely flat by April, which again just speaks to that very aggressive seasonality. We don't see that bid really reemerging on the term structure until next November again next year, listeners, when it gets to about 5.3% bid. So again, one of the more seasonal products on the docket. 2.5 puts, did you have those in your radar? Looks like we might have some roll-ups going as well. 2/4 puts did about 38,000 contracts this week. Looks like they were closing of about 11,000 and 15,000 each on Monday and Wednesday, respectively. So we could have had some roll-ups going from the 2/4 to the 2.5 puts. Also makes a lot of sense. Nat gas is rallying. Folks want their hedges on. They want them to be a little bit tighter. So they roll them up. Makes total sense. We have opening on both on Tuesday and not much going up today. So it does seem like we do have also some roll-ups going on the hedges. Let's go a little bit farther out. What if you want some upside? What if you're looking for a little bit of upside here in nat gas? Well, allow me to present the 3/4 calls, also in December. Also trading pretty actively this week. 48,000 contracts on the tape. Looks like opening all week long as well. The big day was Monday, almost 17,000 on the tape, 14,000 on Wednesday, about 10,000 today against an OI of 25,000, and 7,000 on Tuesday. So mostly opening throughout the week on these 3/4. Worth noting, 45,000 of the 3/2 also traded. And looks like they kind of line up, so we might have some opening vertical action here. We have about 13,500 of the 3/2 trading on Monday against nearly 17,000 of the 3/4. Doesn't seem like it's a roll. Just seems like it's straight opening vertical paper here. Also about 14,000 on Wednesday versus about 11,500 of the 3/2 on Wednesday. So again, looks like some folks legging into some upside. I guess if you're going to buy some upside with only 14 days to go, I certainly like it better as a spread than just buying them outright, I should say. So 3/4, 3/2 call spread versus 2/2 puts. I don't know, Uncle Mike, if you had to pick one of those ways to go, let's assume they're buying. Which way are you going? Are you fading to the 2/2 puts, or are you buying that 3/4, 3/2 call spread? Again, only 14 days to go, so you got to be right pretty quick.
I'd be buying the call spread, I think. I never like betting against natural gas and something like this. And well, yeah, if I had to pick, I think I'd do the call spread.
Yeah, I think there's more majesty to it, right? There's more compelling than the 2/2 puts. Now, granted, in the past, the 2/2 puts have worked out probably. So
true.
Maybe we'll see. We get another warm snap here, and those 2/2 puts are paying. But yeah, it's interesting. Interesting stuff out here. Let's look really quickly. There's usually our resident put or call strip going up this week, and that appears to be the case. We have, looks like it's the 2 puts again, going up about 1,500 times in every month from about April out to pretty much close to the end of the year next year. So interesting. And we have 2/2 puts pretty far out. 2026. April of 2026 going up 2,020 times in a strip all the way from April till October of 2026. So if you can wrap your heads around nat gas all the way out in 2026, maybe this put strip is for you. All right, Uncle Mike, we hung out in nat gas. We talked about your beloved Bitcoin. What else do you want to talk about on the show this week, sir?
You know what? I kind of want to just go against the grain. And we're in the energy space, so let's go with some WTI.
Wow. All right. You're going to make liars of everybody who's voting, but of course, in that poll. You're just trying to paint the tape now at this point. I see what you're doing. All right, listeners. I wasn't going to make them do it. It is lighting it up, though, to the dark side. Number 5 to the dark side is WTI this week, off 6.01%. So they are coming for WTI. Again, you can find this, listeners, same asset class, energy, just pop out a nat gas in the product family, go up 2 slots to crude oil, then bam, WTI, Bob's your uncle, and you're off to the races, listeners. Now, is WTI off to the races this week from a volume perspective? That is the question. And the answer is yes. It's not quite nat gas, but it's keeping pace. It's doing pretty well. 729,000 contracts on the tape for WTI. Remember, WTI is a pretty beefy contract. The futures for 1,000 barrels. How do I know that? It's because we have the futures rundown now on the network, listeners. So we're going deep into a lot of these contracts here, which is always fun. You need 1,000 barrels of WTI dumped on your lawn. Maybe you're scared of that. Tune in to the futures rundown. We'll talk you off the ledge. 68, man, we're back in the 60 handle, Uncle Mike. 68 3/4, off $1.65 this week, or 2 1/3%. You know, we were flirting with the 70s, and then it seems like Uncle Mike, they just cut the legs out from under this thing. Of course, OPEC talking about a reduced demand going forward. We're talking about maybe having an oversupply here in the U.S. So at the end of the day, it's hard to ignore basic economic fact. If you have weaker demand and too much supply, it's going to go down. That's what they teach you in your Econ 101 textbooks. But we have been saying for a while, Uncle Mike, I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. It does seem like the crude oil market in general has been just whistling past the graveyard of all this international turmoil. We, of course, have what's going on in Israel, spilling over into the north in Lebanon. There's been this back and forth, I attack you, you attack me with Israel and Iran. All of this threatening to really destabilize the region. And in the middle of all of this, they were crushing WTI, they were crushing Brent, and they were crushing vol, which seemed to me to be short-sighted, I think, to put it mildly. What are your thoughts that we're now back at a 68 handle here in WTI, sir? Crude oil, taking it on the chin.
Yeah, it really is. And there's just a lot of things that today happen that wouldn't have necessarily happened 10, 20 years ago. And that was pretty, if 20 years ago, bad stuff was going to happen, then you would just a lot of times automatically see gold or silver just go up. Bad stuff's happening. Oh no, we got to go buy some gold and silver. Well, it doesn't really work that way anymore. And similar with oil in that, yes, we have oil down right now, but I think what's different about oil at this stage is that there's just a lot more factors that exist with oil than did 20 years ago. They're actually it exists in America now, in that we're pumping it more in America now, like with North Dakota and things like that. So I think that plays a factor into things. I think currency also plays a factor into the price of oil, and so you have that's more of a factor, I should say, than I think it was 20 years ago. Combine that with the fact that there's more of a currency game now. And as much as I hate to say it, I think somehow, I don't know quite how, but somehow Bitcoin and crypto has a hand in the pricing of energy in some way, shape, or form. Now, exactly how, I don't know, but I can just recall 20 years ago, just having conversations, well, crude's up. Well, the dollar's down. So, well, I guess that makes sense. Or the dollar's up. So, yeah, you'd have various correlations that you'd always talk about. But now, correlations really aren't as correlated as they once were. So, crude oil is kind of an interesting thing. I'm glad we're talking about it today. I think it's a very neat thing to see. And we'll see where it goes going forward, because now the other factor of oil that exists is that we're going to have President Trump in the White House, and things are, I'm not saying that they're going to be better or worse. I'm not trying to endorse a political candidate, but they are going to be much different than they were over the course of the last 4 years, because Trump's not going to be pushing the electric car the way with which the previous administration has. So I think it's going to be not only oil, but there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to keep an eye on in ways like we never have before in the past.
That's the weird thing to me. You say he's not going to push the electric car or solar. He's going to go on the drill baby drill route, and yet his closest guy is Musk, who's all in on solar cars and energy. Or solar, I should say, solar energy and cars, electric cars. So that to me is a weird juxtaposition. I don't understand quite how that's going to work. But Uncle Mike, people are snuffing out that you're painting the tape because our poll has now moved to 50-50 between heck yes, he is going to talk about his favorite three, and heck no. So,
oh, I'm glad I went short the heck yeses.
There's some skullduggery afoot, and our crowd is sniffing it out. Let's see what we can sniff out here in WTI. Like we said, they're coming for this. If you've been listening to our show for the last month and change, we've had a lot of folks on here who are deep into all things crude oil. You know, we had Carly Garner, we had Dan Gramzo, we had Kevin Green and others, and all of them have been pretty much saying, if we start testing that mid-60s range, 65, if we really break through that with WTI, then it might be a case of look out below. We might really be in for another range of downside here. Where it stops, nobody knows. I remember back in the dark times, back a while ago, when we were selling off hard in crude, and everyone came on this network saying, man, those 60 puts, those are the best sale going. I would love to buy WTI at 60. And of course, we blew through it all the way down. People were wearing that 60 handle for a while. So there has been in the past this viewpoint that the mid 60s range or the 60 handle in and of itself are inflection points in crude. We'll see if that's the case. Or in this case, if we break through 65, is it look out below? Might be another fun question of the week as well, listeners. Maybe producers take note. Maybe we need a fun crude oil poll coming up next week. But right now, it's a lot of red on the WTI screen. Like we said, about almost 750,000 contracts. And how crazy is this also, Uncle Mike? And granted, we have expiration coming up tomorrow, so that kind of throws a wrench into it. But I feel like I'm talking about an equity here. We got 750,000 contracts. 46.4% of those going up this week went up in the contract that expires in 1 day. So like we're talking 0-day WTI. So what do you think?
The 0 DTEs on the slippery stuff. I gotta love it. Yeah, when you were saying that large, especially for that big of a notional value, that's something that there's definitely a lot of interest in that, because 68 doesn't mean $6,800. It means a lot more than that in the crude world. So definitely a lot of interest there. So good for the Merc.
Yeah, there we go. Let's see here. Vol-wise, where does crude stack up to Bitcoin or nat gas? It's a little more than half of that. It's close to a 35, about 34.86, up about a third of a point right now. But that's in the contract that's going away tomorrow. Obviously, it's kind of hard to talk vol with 1 day to go. So let's go out a little bit farther. Let's go out, let's say, a week, that eternity of time. And that vol is even lower. It's at about a 29, which does kind of jive with what we're seeing out here on the CVOL front as well. I think some of the CVOL is getting a little bit conflated by some of these near-dated contracts going away, because our net CVOL is up. Obviously, nat gas lifting it this week, but WTI coming in, vol coming in pretty much across the board with the exception of these front two contracts. You go out a week and the vol's at a 29 off 5 points. So they are definitely coming for WTI vol this week. Skew-wise, like we said, so much of the paper is going away tomorrow, but there is still a pretty strong bid to the calls here, Uncle Mike, and a discount to the puts. And it looks like it extends all the way from today all the way out for at least a couple of weeks. In fact, you go all the way out to, let's go all the way out to mid-December. You still have about 11%, 9 to 11% bid for the calls. The contract going out tomorrow, they are 12.5% bid. So demonstrable bid here for the calls. Going out 5 days, nearly 14% bid. The puts, at least for right now, no one really seems to want them. They are discounted 4% on that front contract, 3% going out another day, and going out 4 days, the puts are about 1.5% discounted. So the puts kind of flat to discounted, and the calls bid up. So does that maybe show that maybe we're finding a little bit of an equilibrium point? We're going to start maybe bouncing a little bit here. That would seem to back up some of these thoughts that, we have to move up here. Otherwise, it's look out below. But we're not really seeing the look out below prints of folks loading up on the puts. So interesting stuff. In terms of action out here, it looks like it was the 70 calls. That probably is the reason why we're seeing so much of this bid here in the call wing. 70 calls trading pretty actively all week long, and looks like opening all week long as well. 37, almost 38,000 contracts going up this week. The big day was yesterday, 12,300, but looks like today is giving it a run for its money, 11,900 on the tape today, so probably going to eclipse it today. That's against an OI of 24,000, so nearly half of the OI going up again today. 7,100 on Monday, 6,200 on Tuesday. Looks like opening pretty much all week long, so folks opening on the 70 calls with, again, 1 day to go. So interesting. Are they overriding the heck out of them? Only 1 day to go. We got a point and a quarter out of the money, or I think we're in for a little bit of a turnaround. That'd be a pretty quick turnaround, but we have seen weirder things out here. If you want maybe a little bit more downside, how about these 65 puts? Again, that's that kind of magical strike everyone's talking about. 23,000 of those on the tape this week. The big day for those was Wednesday. About 9,000 going up, mostly opening there. 6,600 today against an OI of 23,000. And looks like Monday, 5,200. Tuesday, 2,800. And yeah, so interesting. Back and forth on the 65 puts, which makes some sense. If you had some in your back pocket and we're selling off, you might want to monetize those, especially because they're going the way of the dodo tomorrow. Don't have a lot of time to sit on your hands. I know, Uncle Mike, I'll make you do the same little which do you prefer game. 1 day to go. Are you going for the 70 calls or the 65 puts in WTI, sir?
I'm going 70 calls.
You got to, right? They're closer.
Yeah, I think you do. And it's kind of like one of those things like, would you rather, this is like one of those would you rather games. Would you rather get beaten up by a duck with spikes or a dinosaur with mittens, or I don't know. It reminds me of like one of those games with this one. Would you rather?
I think the duck with mittens. That sounds pretty harmless.
The dinosaur with mittens.
Oh, the dinosaur with mittens. Oh, yeah. Okay, duck with spikes. All right, you can do some damage there. I'll still probably take the duck, because I think just mass-wise, you're in much better shape with the duck than you are the dinosaur. The dinosaur could have mittens and still crush you. So I think I'm out on the dinosaur. But there, I like your comparison, Mr. Uncle Mike.
It's kind of how it feels, though, doesn't it?
It does. The duck with mittens. Maybe we have a title for, or no, I keep saying that. The dinosaur with mittens and a duck with spikes. There we go. All right, let's look a little bit farther out than just 1 day. I know the market is obsessed with 0 day, listeners, but we do have options expiring beyond that, including, looks like we've got the 60 puts lighting it up out here in June of next year. By the way, that future at about a 67.5, so a little bit closer to the 60 strike than the front month future, but not that much. And looks like they went up about 10,800 times. It looks like folks were bailing on them, though. They dumped a bunch of them, particularly on Wednesday. So looks like a little bit of bail in there. Then we do have some upside a little bit farther out past the end of this year to Jan of next year. You've got the 75s in January going up 12,000 times this week. That future in January is at a 68.5. So interesting. So the 75s, not quite as outlandish there. They went up 12,400 times this week. Looks like a little bit of back and forth action there as well. 4,700 on Monday, mostly opening. 3,500 today against an OI of 14,000. 2,200 on Wednesday, slightly closing there. It is possible we have some roll downs from the 80 strike. Looks like the 80s were closing on Monday as well, about 3,300 times. So doesn't quite line up 1-to-1, but there could be some similar paper. And then weirdly enough, it could be closing on the 75s and opening on the 80s, going the other way on Wednesday. So weird back and forth paper out here. So there is some upside to be found out here. Uncle Mike, you've talked WTI, you've talked nat gas, you've talked your beloved Bitcoin. We probably got time for one more product, sir. What else do you want to squeeze in?
I mean, there's part of me that wants to not do it just so that way it's like a suspenseful thing if I come back. But then I can't not talk about it. I got to do it. No, I can't do it. No, I got to do silver. Let's do it.
All right. To the metals we go, listeners.
Werewolves beware. It's time to explore the options activity in silver, gold, and other shiny things. It's time to talk metals.
All right, listeners, to the shiny stuff we go. Go to that drop down, pop out of energy. Going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 slots, pretty much to the bottom of the list for metals. We're going to hang out in precious for the rest of the show. We're going to go down 1 slot in product. Skip gold for now. We're going to go to silver And it has had quite the run this year, looking so robust. Finally taking some of that bloom off the rose, some of that luster off of the shine there. 30.48 coming into the start of the show. That puts it off 96 cents just this week. Of course, if you expand beyond, that's a little over 3%. Not enough to make it into our dark side. We had a lot of dark side this week, listeners. So you had to make at least 6%, but a respectable dark side week nonetheless. Decent volume week for silver as well. 70,000 contracts on the tape. Of that, about 43% going up in the D's contract that has about 11 days to go. So some near dated flow out here in the metals. Uncle Mike, you've been on here before talking up your beloved silver, and looks like we had a nice run. What do you think? Is this it? Is the run finally over, sir?
I'm not sure, because it has had a near 50% move on year to date, or at least it had as of roughly a month ago. But we're getting a little bit of a pullback now. But the pullback level with which we are at, you could say that we are at a level of support. Now, the other side of this that I could see is that it does appear that we could be in a descending triangle because of how silver kind of went straight up in mid to the later part of October, and then now it's kind of coming down a little bit slower. And so that's the bear case for it. So I'm bullish on it for the long term. I think it's just going to be like as I say every time I'm on this show, it's like a thief in the night. At some point, it's going to just all of a sudden be at 45 one day, and no one will have expected it. And so with silver, you just got to kind of keep an eye on it and be patient through the times that it's boring. It's been anything but boring this year. But if you compare it to the early days of the option block, when I was really a lot more into it, a lot heavier, and it seemed like it was going up 3 and 5, it would have like a movement of 3 to 5% every day, for better or for worse, oftentimes for better. At least that's how it seemed. We're not there. It's been the most, you could say this has been the most boring 50% rally that I've ever seen in silver. So it continues to do what it does, and we'll see where it goes from here.
So just to clarify, are you still all in on silver? Are you hedging pretty tightly at these levels? Are you doing your beloved 2-year collar? What are you up to?
No, so I got the expirations coming in January, and so it's kind of one of those things, and I have not rolled up. And so I put it in probably, I had a modified risk reversal on silver to where I've had upside since at least an SLV, the 22 level. And so from there, I would say that silver I don't have any of the upside hedged, which I'm fine with because I don't really want that part of it hedged. But it won't be it would be very difficult for it to be a losing position, to say the least, on it.
All right, and after Jan, letting the dice fly, we'll see what happens.
Let's see where we're at in January. Want to see where volatility is, see if the reverse skew is still there. A lot of factors to be examined come the new year.
Yeah, January given how it's moving just every week, that's an eternity in the shiny stuff right now, listeners. Like we said, decent paper this week, about 70,000 contracts on the tape, 43% of that going up in D, so we'll head out there. What is the vol, you might be asking, in silver this week? It's about a 27, about exactly, off about 0.6 of a point. So silver, obviously a little bit more volatile than some of the other precious metals out there, taking a little bit off the top this week. In terms of skew, we usually see in the shiny stuff, we see a discount to the puts and a bid to the calls. That is the case right now. Getting a little bit more pronounced. It was kind of modest last week in the D's contract. The puts were 1.3%. Actually, the puts were bid last week. That's interesting. So maybe that's a sign that they're 1.3% bid. We don't see that too often. So maybe that was a sign that we were at a bit of a top there as well. 3.3% discounted are the puts this week. So back to a more normal skew setup. The calls last week, 1.7% bid. This week, 3.7% bid. So that 1.7%, that's also not much for a precious metal. Usually we see these skews bid to high heaven. So the fact that the puts were bid last week, the calls were close to flat, that's probably a good sign that maybe we were nearing a little bit of the top of the teeter-totter, at least for right now. So interesting stuff. And going a little bit farther out on the term structure, let's go out past the end of December. Let's go to next year out here. We do have a little bit more bid if we go to February is about 6% bid, We go out to March, 7.5%. We go out to April, 8.5%, and May, 9.5%. So you see where I'm going here. July, 10.5%. So the bid creeps up as we go farther out. That's more along the lines of what we tend to expect with the precious metals. 1.7% bid. That's not much, and maybe shouldn't surprise us that silver given some of those gains back, and shouldn't also surprise us that the big dog this week were the 30 puts in December, going up 3,300 times. May not sound like a lot, but again, you're only talking 70,000 contracts total, listeners. 3,300. Looks like folks were bailing on these all week long. The big day was today, though, 1,862 against an OI of about 3,000 left. So more than half of the OI trading today. And if past is prologue, folks are monetizing these puts, which looks like they owned last week because they were bid last week. So folks were long some puts, which is not a thing we normally see in the precious metals. So in and of itself, kind of interesting. Either way, looks like folks getting the heck out of Dodge on some 30 puts. It looks like we have a lot of openings on the 29s as well. So looks like we have some rolling action here. 3,300 of the 30 puts going up against 1,700 of the 29 puts this week. Doesn't line up exactly 1-to-1 with maybe the exception of Monday. You got about 800 versus about 700 there. Every other day is kind of wonky, the numbers, but looks like we're opening all week on the 29 puts, closing all week on the 30 puts. So that looks like a roll to me, listeners. Again, half the size on the opening leg, so maybe you could infer that some folks were short those and they're getting run over. Either way, you don't usually see half the size, so that's kind of interesting in and of itself. If you're sitting on money, you're doing the house money roll, you're probably doing the same amount, if not more. So interesting stuff out here, listeners. We don't talk puts in the metals all the time, but that's kind of where we are right now with things selling off. If you want a little bit of Uncle Mike upside, we've got the 35 calls also in December, lighting it up this week. Not a ton, though, 2,381. The big days were Tuesday and today, about 700 and change both days. Closing pretty much all week as well. The OI today, 2,370, so probably closing again today as well. Looks like folks were bailing on all the upside of 34 calls, trading 1,700 times this week, closing every day this week as well. And we all know in the metals, folks do nothing but buy upside. So if they're closing these this week, that means they're dumping them, which is interesting, given the fact that the skew is kind of ticking up. But yeah, just a weird week across the board here. And opening on the 33, so they could have been closing on 35s, closing on 34s, and reestablishing on the 33s because they were opening all week long to the tune of about 1,500 contracts. So a lot of interesting paper out here in silver, which is what makes it fun, listeners. All right, listeners, and that music means we've come to the end of another journey, a very interesting journey. Uncle Mike, you made liars of everyone who voted in our poll that you were going to do it. So our audience was pretty split. I think there was some skullduggery, though. I think you were painting the taint there, sir. What do you say to those accusations?
I know nothing. Yeah. It's an administrative matter that needs to be handled administratively.
We'll talk to the CFTC, get them on the case, and see if they can dig into the skullduggery. In the meantime, folks, if you want to chat with Uncle Mike about any of this stuff, including maybe nat gas, you want to mix it up, you can talk silver, of course, you can talk your S&P, you can get on the boat with a 10-year note, but maybe you want to talk some nat gas, or dare I say it, his beloved Bitcoin. Uncle Mike, where should they go? What should they do?
A couple things. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. I try to put out a lot of content, or set up an appointment with me. Go to stcharleswealth.com. Love to have a conversation with anyone if you're looking for a financial advisor who delves in the derivatives.
stcharleswealth.com, the place to go to learn more. And of course, you know where to go to follow along with the show, not just while we're live, not just while you're listening to the podcast, listeners. You can do these reports whenever you want. I very much encourage you to take advantage. It's great free data in the world of futures and futures options, which you don't say too often. Not a lot of great data. That's one of the challenges in the futures and futures options market. The data kind of a little bit behind the world of equities and equity options. So if you get your hands on some quality free data, you grab it with both hands and hold on for dear life. The place to go, cmegroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. That'll get you access to all the free reports you put out. They are live all week long. Of course, if you like those, you want to go beyond, get more, Nick and his team over there at Bantix, BANTIX.com, Bantix.com. You can get the pro versions of everything we talk about here on the show. You can go deep on quick skew. Trust me, it's a deep dive, but it's awesome. You can see the evolution of all these things. Hardcore tools, pace of the roll. It's for the big boys, but if you think you can handle it, bandtix.com, the place to go to learn more. That's going to do it for us on the network today. Back again tomorrow with our usual double header. First off, we're talking vol on vol views. Who will join us? Well, you got to tune in to find out. And then, of course, after that, we come back one final time for the week exclusively for all the cool kids in the secret club to talk some unusual activity. I got it on good authority. Our buddy, the Oracle of New Hampshire, is going to be in there. We're going to break down all those crazy strangles he was talking about a couple of weeks ago. All sorts of fun. If you want to hear how it all goes down, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get behind the velvet rope. Then we're off for the weekend. I rest my voice till we're back again on Monday for the option block with some guy named Uncle Mike all the way through to next Thursday, another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.